Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, the NBA, the past 2 years, it seems like there's just been a rash of injuries to premier players. Last year it was almost a predominant story throughout the NBA, and then it reared its head in the playoffs as well. And this year it seems to be no different. We've got now Kevin Durant's going to be out for an extended period of time. Anthony Davis has already missed an extended period of time. And we've also now Lonzo Ball looks like he's going to be out for a while. The Bulls have dealt with other injuries. So it's not just COVID that's wreaking havoc on the league this year. It's injuries. What's your assessment on why this is happening?
Well, I think the easy answer, Jet, would be the last 2 years is dealing not with COVID, but the effects of COVID, right? So the league shut down for 4 months back in 2020. They started up with the bubble, and you finally crowned a champion in October when the Lakers won the title in 2020. And then you were back to work by Christmas of that year. So there wasn't much of an off season. And then last season went all the way into the middle of July. A lot of these players went to the Olympics. And it was back to normal schedule in 2021, 2022. So the last two off seasons really haven't been off seasons. So especially teams that play deep into the postseason, their players have played a lot of games and haven't had enough time to recover from that. I mean, look at Kevin Durant. He came back last year from that Achilles injury, played a season, lost in the second round of the playoffs, went to the Olympics, and then comes back and it's ready to start the season right up again. You know, look at a player like Luka Doncic, who got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs, but then, spent the summer at the Olympics and then came back and was somewhat out of shape. So I think that has something to do with it, that the off seasons have been far too short. Could it be a case where players are overtrained, that, maybe they're carrying a little bit too much weight? That may be the case with Zion Williamson. Obviously, he's a huge man, so that may explain his injuries. I'm certainly not that can be used as an explanation for Kevin Durant, who's as thin as he's ever been. But it just seems to me that the two short off seasons have led to this. And also, I think teams are much more careful now. So you get Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis. Long-term goal of the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Lakers is the postseason. So no need to rush those guys back. Make sure they get close to 100% so that when we get to March, April, that they're ready to go. It's not football where guys play literally injured, especially like interior linemen are playing with broken bones and, wearing knee braces and doing all that. It's a completely different sport. Hockey and football, they kind of rush you back out there to play. Whereas baseball and basketball, the players are just, mentally and physically. So I think that has something to do with it. But the bigger issue to me, Jet, is that we've had two straight really short off seasons, and that's going to lead to more injuries.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems like basic logic, right? If you have less time to rest and recover, you're more likely to get injured. And last year we saw a rash of it. And this year, like I said, it's no different. I mean, it's becoming a big story because so many stars have gone down. We mentioned, Kevin Durant and AD, but just I'll run down a list of other kind of premier players who have missed time with one injury or another. Giannis, Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid. But I mean, Joel Embiid does it every single year. So that's not a huge surprise. Jalen Brown has missed some time. Now Paul George is going to miss an extended period of time. We know Kawhi Leonard is out for the year. Ja Morant missed a significant period of time. You mentioned Luka Doncic already. Karl Anthony Towns missed with COVID, so that doesn't count. LeBron had an injury earlier in the season, if you're remembering correctly. So, it's virtually every team has been affected by this, Sap.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron's missed 12 games, and he's always been the most durable guy. But his first year in LA, he got hurt. Last year in LA, he got hurt. This year with the abdominal strain. And again, he's 37 years old and has logged an incredible amount of minutes. He's third all time in minutes logged in his career. He's going to end up being number one in that category as well as not just points. So, you can kind of understand that with him being a guy who's played a lot and he's kind of played basketball a little bit like Derrick Henry plays running back, right? I mean, it's not like he plays an easy finesse game, LeBron. I mean, he's going to the basket, creating contact, but also getting contact. Last 2 years, the healthiest guy in the league has been Nikola Jokic, who looks the least like a basketball player. He has like no muscle definition, right? And he's got like a dad bod out there, right?
Yeah.
So then these guys are somewhat overtrained. I mean, that can happen. So that would lead you to more muscle pulls. Like I don't ever expect Nikola Jokic to have a muscle strain because I don't know if he has any muscles.
But then you look at guys, so you'd be like, okay, well, Jokic plays this sort of like very smooth, like easy paced game. He's not sprinting up and down the court. He's just, such a unique player, but it doesn't look like he's exerting like a crazy amount of effort. You're like, okay, so like I can buy that he's not getting hurt. But then you see somebody like Russell Westbrook, who's, whirling dervish and all over the place, crashing on the court and stuff, but he's also never hurt. So I don't really know what to make of that.
Well, he's a freak, Russell Westbrook, and I'm sure there are a lot of Laker fans that wish he would get hurt.
How is he never hurt?
Well, look at his body. He's built like an Adonis. I think you can make a case that he's the best
so
athlete
LeBron
in the NBA. Right, but LeBron's bigger, right? I mean, LeBron's 260. Westbrook's like 6'3", 205. But some guys just, stay healthy. And Westbrook's had his knee issues in the past, but he always recovered from them. I mean, he's a physical freak, as is LeBron. Now, again, LeBron's 4 years older than Westbrook and plays a different style of basketball. But that's a great point because, Westbrook, you would think that throwing his body around, kind of like the way Allen Iverson did, that, it's going to lead to a lot of injuries. But Iverson was a pretty durable guy as well. I mean, how many times did he lead the league in minutes played? And he was 5'10". Some guys are just cut out differently, you know what I'm saying? And then other guys can plow through injuries. And again, I think the teams hold the players back a little bit. If there's an issue, the team is like, we've invested a lot of money in this player. We don't want to put him out there and then make it worse, right? So if you've got some sort of muscle strain or hamstring issue or whatever the case is, let's rest the guy. Let's be cautious. Greg Popovich did this for years, right? He was the original coach to put forth with load management, and we see Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker had long careers, right? So it pays off. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. There's logic to it, but at the same time, the NBA and the fans really hate the load management aspect of it. But I think the injuries we're talking about are legitimate sort of injuries. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to come back from it, but it's less, I think, load management and more being overly cautious. And I think what we've seen, Sap, in the past couple of years too, is that for these teams that have, really high championship aspirations or have won it already or are sort of veteran laden, seeding doesn't appear to matter to them that much. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, all last season we talked about, well, if the Lakers just get in and they're healthy with LeBron and Anthony Davis, that they have a chance, even as the 7th seed. They had to go through the play-in tournament. And look, they were up 2-1 against Phoenix in that first round series, and they were up 10 points in game 4. I thought they were going to win that series in 6 games at that point, and then Anthony Davis got hurt, and that was pretty much the end of the series. So it is something that can be done. We saw Toronto the year before really load manage Kawhi Leonard. I believe he only played 60 games that year, so by the postseason, he had more in his tank than, say, other players, especially the guys that he defeated in Golden State, which dealt with injuries. I mean, Durant got hurt, Clay got hurt, Curry was playing less than healthy, and Kawhi was able to secure the championship. So, yeah, I think that's the other thing, too. It's like, why, Joel Embiid, who I think right now could be the MVP of this league, load manage the guy. The other night he scored 50 points in 27 minutes. So, he's like channeling Wilt Chamberlain. But, do you want him leading the league in minutes? Hell no. Give him his time off. He's a big man who's dealt with injuries so that you have him ready in April, May, and hopefully for the 76ers into June. So that's a big, big part of it. It's different than football. There's no load management in football. I mean, God forbid you try to take Tom Brady off the field. In a blowout, he's going to push back. But that's a different sport. Those contracts aren't guaranteed. Brady's is. But obviously, a lot of the secondary players, they're not guaranteed. If they're not, they could get cut and their career's over, and then you have to try to make that money back. So it's a big difference from sport to sport. And also, again, football's once a week, and it's critical that you have you guys out there. Basketball, it's an 82 game schedule. I mean, a game in January is not as important as, say, a football game in January or even December or November.
I'm curious, Sap, my wheels are sort of turning as we're talking about this. Do you think that home court advantage, so seeding, it has become less important in basketball over the past, I don't know, let's just call it decade? Or do you think it's just sort of these teams, are we've seen more super teams in the past, and seeding is irrelevant to them.
Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee won the title last year. They didn't have home court advantage in the second round against Brooklyn, and they were able to win Game 7 in overtime. And they didn't have home court advantage in the finals against Phoenix, and they beat Phoenix in 6 games after losing the first 2 games in Phoenix. So teams can come back more readily, maybe able to win on the road. I mean, I remember, watching basketball in the 80s where it was like, good luck coming to Boston Garden and trying to beat the Celtics, or good luck.
Is it less hostile now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. First of all,
maybe that has to do with it.
That could have to do with that. The home court advantage isn't as big. I mean, the old Garden, that place, if the people that were there then were there now, half of them would be tossed. I mean, there were there was like a much more racial tension. Seriously, it was completely different place than it is now. I mean, if you yell too much, they may ask you to leave. I mean, look at even in football stadiums, the same thing. I remember the old Foxborough Stadium. Hell, I remember when it was Schaefer Stadium in the 70s. That place was a zoo. Like, they've stopped having Monday night football games there because, people were, getting sloshed and there were deaths, and it looked like the fall of Saigon in the parking lot. And now it's like, if you swear, you're asked to leave because it's more of a family environment. So yeah, I think home court advantage may feel as it was in the past because it's just not as hostile. I mean, the Lakers Celtics, those games were insane in the 80s. It was just like, especially at the Garden. I mean, the fans were on top of you. Lord knows what they were saying. Now it's not so much. The players then were kind of used to it. Now it's different. The players will speak up and push back. But yeah, I mean, and look in the case of the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, maybe they're going to start tanking games, figuring that they'd rather not have home court advantage in the playoffs because they'll get more of Kyrie Irving. He can play on the road. He can't play at home. So, maybe Brooklyn falls to the 4 or 5 seed and says, yeah, we'll play more games on the road because we'll have Kyrie more available to us playing on the road rather than at home. And the one thing they want to obviously avoid is a first round series against Toronto because he couldn't play anywhere. He'd be out of that series. They should beat Toronto.
And a finals against the Warriors means he doesn't play either, correct?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
What a teammate. What a good teammate he is.
He's not getting vaccinated. Yeah, and there's Kevin Durant who's going to push back and try to fight back to get back healthy with his knee. And James Harden, I think, seems somewhat irritated by the whole thing. Yeah, so the Nets, as great as they are and as intriguing as they are to follow, I still think that teams in the East that have a better chance to get to the finals is still the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks, who were constructed like a real team. I think Miami's still up there. Chicago, I don't necessarily buy into, but yeah, I would still think Miami and Milwaukee would be ahead of Brooklyn because of that reason. You can't go into the postseason when you have, your third best player and a guy who's a phenomenal player who's had huge playoff moments, who's only available to play on the road. I mean, that's just not a recipe for success.
Against certain teams. Yeah, not even
against certain teams, right? Yeah, he can't play against Toronto and he couldn't play against Golden State. So yeah, what are we talking about here? But back to the injuries, I just think that a lot of it has to do with the 2 short off seasons, and sometimes there's just no explanation. I think I remember 4 years ago in the NFL, it felt like every superstar in the league was hurt. I remember Aaron broken collarbone in week 5 and missed like 7 or 8 games. It was just one quarterback after another that was getting hurt. I'm like, boy, the sport really depends on
these quarterbacks. Brady.
Except for Brady. He's just, he's some other being. I mean, he's a cyborg without question. Yeah, but the guys were out. I mean, so, and that kind of hurts the sport, although football always survives. Like I've often said, Tom Brady to me is the greatest football player ever. I also can make a case he's the greatest American team sport athlete. I think I can make that case. I think he's accomplished more than Jordan, LeBron, Gretzky, pick whatever. But the NFL would be no different if Tom Brady never existed. Like if Tom Brady never came about in 2001, the league would still be wildly popular. Yeah, it would just be. Now basketball's different. The sport grew with Bird, Magic, then it grew more with Michael, and now it's huge worldwide because of Michael and also because of LeBron and all the great stars. Now they are more star dependent. Football, it's more about the shield, the uniform, the branding of the Packers and Cowboys and Steelers and all of that.
Well, too, like when a star quarterback goes down, obviously you never want to see that too, but there's intrigue amongst the backup most of the time, right? Like, there's a storyline there. If Kevin Durant goes down and his backup goes in, you're like, well, we know what this is going to be. This is not going to be enjoyable. So
Yeah, we're not gonna have a Drew Bledsoe to Tom Brady situation.
right. No one's like, oh, maybe
no.
he's gonna, maybe it's a Wally
Yeah.
Pipp sort of situation with Kevin Durant's backup. That's just not possible in the NBA.
Yeah, LeBron retires and THT is gonna take over the Lakers. Like that's
Right.
not gonna happen.
Yeah. So, but it's all interesting. And the injuries are certainly playing, a big factor in this NBA season. But I'm not particularly surprised because, like you said, truncated season plus the Olympics. It all makes sense. Hey, Sap, I didn't want to talk about the Lakers today because we've been talking about them a lot. But when Charles Barkley goes on a fun rant, I feel like you kind of have to talk about it. And he did go on a really fun rant the other day on Inside the NBA on TNT. He was completely defending Russell Westbrook and Lakers head coach Frank Vogel and saying that the amount of criticism they're getting is unfair. The rest of the Lakers roster deserves to get more criticism, especially their front office. And they were saying Rob Pelinka. I would say LeBron James. I know you heard what Chuck had to say. What were your sort of assessments on his Lakers rant?
As usual, Chuck had a lot of really great things to say there. Look, I'm not a fan of Russell Westbrook, but when you acquired him, you knew what you were getting. If you decide to bring a pet tiger into your home, don't be surprised when the tiger acts like a tiger. And this is how Russell Westbrook plays the game of basketball. So this is what you get. A lot of turnovers, poor three-point shooting, some hideous decisions, no defense. This is what you're getting from Russell Westbrook. So to lay all the blame on him is foolish because, there are other players out there that certainly could play better. He's not playing great defense, but neither is anyone else on the team, including LeBron James. My guy is not playing defense at the level he can. Maybe he can't anymore, 37
He's
years
not
old.
a regular season defender anymore, LeBron James.
No.
Not going to do it in the regular season.
Yeah, he's taking the season off in that sense. Maybe he's going to lead the league in scoring, which would be a feather in his cap. But, obviously, let's lay a little bit at Anthony Davis. And again, he got injured. I get that. And it's not his fault, but he's always injured. He always seems to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's accident prone. You ever hear that about young kids? Oh, he's accident prone. He's going to walk through the plate of glass. He's going to fall down the stairs. He's just,
Mr.
Magoo. Mr. Magoo. That's me who can't see, but I tread very lightly. But yeah, I think that's part of it. I get all that. Frank Vogel, a little bit different in the sense that first of all, there was no connection from the front office to Frank Vogel because Frank Vogel is a defensive coach and they won the championship 2 years ago because of defense. I mean, that was their calling. Right. They played outstanding defense. So they decided to trade all the defenders to get Russell Westbrook and a bunch of old guys, Carmelo Anthony, who's never played defense. I mean, Dwight Howard's calcified. I mean, he's got an old team. And so they can't play defense. They can't come up with big stops. They're not a particularly good three-point shooting team. They don't shoot free throws well. They turn the ball over. Other than that, they're fantastic. So, I think that Frank Vogel gets a little bit of the criticism, though, because I think, first of all, he's the guy who for 12 games had Russell Westbrook and Rajon Rondo on the court together at times, which to me is something that is elementary. You don't do that. You don't have two players who can't shoot on the floor in the NBA. This isn't 1987. I mean, you've got to have guys that shoot. So that doesn't work. And then he decided that, DeAndre Jordan was going to be a starting center and play minutes when we know that the Brooklyn Nets decided a year ago that DeAndre Jordan wasn't worth playing, but somehow Frank Vogel was going to resuscitate his career. So that part of it is on Frank Vogel. But yeah, whoever put this roster together, whether it's Pelinka, LeBron, or both, or Kurt Rambis, his wife, Linda Rambis, whoever, I don't know. They're the ones to blame because we said this at the time that this roster was put together. It's like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. How the hell is this going to work?
Yeah, I think that, Barkley had a lot of good points too, and that Westbrook is getting far too much of the blame for what's going wrong in the situation. And I think Barkley admitted this too. He's not playing well. I don't think anybody is going to say Westbrook's playing well, but this isn't all on Russell Westbrook. And a lot of it falls on the front office, who hasn't really, talked about it at all. And again, the face of the front office is Rob Pelinka. I don't know if he was actually the one who said, "Yep, we're going to bring Russell Westbrook." I 100% believe that was LeBron, but it's just he's never going to get the blame for it because he's the face of the league, and arguably you could make a case he's still the best player in the league. So
leading vote getter too with the All-Star voting.
Yeah, he is. I mean, and it's hard to argue against it in terms of how he's individually playing. Now he hasn't elevated his team at all this year. which is, unusual for him, but he individually is playing at a fantastic level. So you can't take that away from him. I just think that there's definitely been mistakes in building this Lakers team. And Barkley kept pointing out, it's not okay that their second best player for the past 3-4 weeks has been Stanley Johnson. That's just not,
right.
It's not a tenable way to win when a guy who
No.
was on the street a month and a half ago is your second best player. You can't expect to be a good team that way. And so I do feel like people have really focused their blame squarely on Vogel and Westbrook. And while they deserve some of it, I do agree with Barkley that there's plenty more to go around than just those two.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, those will be the first ones because the coach is the guy that ultimately will lose his job because they underperform. And then the big acquisition was Russell Westbrook, who it was a shot in the dark to bring him there because, he's an X factor, right? He's a wild card. He's not like a plug and play player. Like Klay Thompson to me has always been the one guy in the league that you could just drop into any situation and he's going to be really effective. And we're even seeing with Klay, as great as he is, he struggled coming back, but of course he did miss 2 full seasons and half of another. So that takes time also to get everybody up to speed. And the Lakers have never been able to have their big three together for an extended period of time, right? Because LeBron missed 12 games. Davis has been out a month. Russell Westbrook's been there. Give the guy credit. He shows up to work every night. So yeah, they haven't been able to do that. And maybe it's going to take a little time for that to get together. I would assume by the trade deadline or at the trade deadline, they're going to make moves to try to get some shooters in there, which they need. But
they're not going to be able to move Westbrook at the trade deadline.
No, you can't. No, that's unless John Wall comes back. I heard some sort of rumor of John Wall and Eric Gordon for Russell Westbrook. Like, whatever, let's just trade one bad contract for another and some old guys. And, it's not 2012.
The Wall contract is worse than the Westbrook contract.
It's worse than yeah. And yeah, exactly. And the thing about Westbrook is he will show up to play. Wall's not the most durable, dependable guy.
Right. I don't know that the Lakers want it. It's not like Wall is a knockdown shooter.
No, they don't have
He's better than Westbrook, but not by much.
And even the whole thing of letting Alex Caruso walk away. There was a guy who did a lot of the dirty work. KCP did a lot of the dirty work. Heck, Kyle Kuzma would look good right now. And I was never a big fan of him. But those are guys that did contribute to a championship team. So why did you just trade out the entire roster for like an entire new roster rather than just tweak it? And again,
I think Caruso is one of the top 3 guys in steals in the league too. He's excellent.
Been fantastic in Chicago. Chicago has the best record in the Eastern Conference, and he's playing fantastic. I mean, I always think back to what if the Lakers just stood pat without Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, and all of that? You'd have Brandon Ingram would be your secondary scorer. You'd have Julius Randle. You'd have Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball. I mean, you'd have some
a good really team, solid team.
Yeah, I would think better than this thing. I mean,
LeBron wasn't willing to play with the young guys.
No, he's at the point now where it's kind of like Tom Brady. I want to go where there's established receivers. I don't want to nurture guys that don't know how to get open. This is what happens when you get older. You get more set in your ways and impatient, and that's what's happened with LeBron. But they'll make deals because it's still now less than 3 weeks away for the trade deadline.
I did enjoy the part of the rant where, they checked in with Shaq because obviously you got to hear what he has to say about the Lakers. He said, Westbrook's not playing well, averaging 4 turnovers a game isn't going to get it done. And he said, I've actually been informed that he always averages 4 turnovers against Drew.
Oh, yeah, no.
So it's like, I don't know what they were, again, like you said, if you buy a tiger.
That's what you get. Like, this is not a surprise.
He's not going to suddenly not turn the ball over. He's always turned the ball over.
He's led the league in turnovers 4 times. He's finished second 4 times. That's 8 times he's finished first or second, and he's there again. So 9 out of his, teen years, he's been first or second in turnovers. Like, that's what he is. Like, Kevin Durant couldn't play with him anymore. Because he wanted a point guard that was a better decision maker. So this is what you got. Like, I don't know what they expected other than this guy's going to come in. He's not going to shoot well. He's going to make poor decisions. He's not going to play defense. That's what you got.
Yeah, it's just funny to me that Lakers fans and, maybe LeBron and the coaching staff are like, man, what the hell with this guy and the turnovers? Well, have you watched him ever play? Did you look at his statistics for his entire career?
Yeah, just going basketball.
Turnovers that's the least surprising thing of his game this year. That's been the most consistent.
Yeah, and he's a 29% 3-point shooter, which is a little below his career average. He's only getting worse. Yeah, I mean, he's a 65% free throw shooter. Your point guard's
I just don't know what they were expecting.
Free throw shooter. No, that's what I mean. Yeah, you got a guy that's been in the league a long time. Look, he's a Hall of Famer, a wildly popular player, very frustrating. Like, I don't even know who to compare him to in any other sport. I really don't. I mean, just
Lamar
someone
Jackson.
kind of, yeah. I mean, the guy you go, wow, this is fantastic to watch. This guy is exceptionally great, but there's a lot of flaws there. So yeah, you kind of have to kind of plow through a lot of the negatives. But you're not going to change him. And plus, we know his personality. No. He's an alpha, right? I mean, this guy is the ultimate alpha. And he's back home in Southern California where he's always wanted to play. He grew up a Laker fan. I know he's got a lot of business interests. He's got car dealerships, and maybe his mind's not into it either. And maybe he's lost some hunger, after finally getting to LA, and it hasn't worked out the way he expected.
It could be, certainly could be. All right, Sap, we're going to end the show with something a little bit fun right now. The NBA just got past the midpoint season, so they've released their top selling jerseys so far for this year. Their top 15. Obviously, no surprise, your guy LeBron is still on top of that list at number 1. A couple interesting names on here, Sap, that sort of shows a little bit of a changing of the guard in the NBA. We've got John Morant coming in at number 7, Trae Young at number 8, LaMelo Ball is 15, RJ Barrett at 14. Barrett, I'm assuming that's just purely because he's on the Knicks, right?
I would think so, yeah. Because when you said RJ Barrett, I needed to pause for like 2 seconds and go, where the hell is he playing? That's right, the Knicks. Yeah, so that makes sense.
So the top, I'll just read you the top 15 quickly and just get your reaction. Then we'll wrap it up here. LeBron at 1, Steph Curry, Giannis, Kevin Durant. No surprises in that top 4. Luka Doncic is number 5, Jason Tatum, John Morant, Trae Young, Klay Thompson, Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, Devin Booker, RJ Barrett, LaMelo Ball. The Klay Thompson at number 9 really surprises me.
Yeah, he hasn't played for 2 years, right? And he's been around forever too. It's not like and he's playing on the same team. It's not like he went to a new franchise, so you have to get the jersey because he's now playing for Denver.
Right, were people just buying it because they really wanted to celebrate his return? Like, we're going to get Klay Thompson jersey. I
mean, they're a great brand, the Warriors, and he's such a likable player. But I mean, I also get the feeling with Klay Thompson that he's more popular among like aficionados. Like the average 12-year-old, I'm sure, likes Klay Thompson, but they're obviously more into Steph Curry, John Morant, Trae Young, guys that they go, whoa, look at this guy, the way he plays. I mean, Klay's kind of like doesn't dribble the ball, is a great shooter and a defender. He's, like I said, he's the best plug and play player in the league. But yeah, that kind of surprised me. But the Warriors, they're a big brand, and maybe, people were just going to celebrate his return after like 2.5 years of being out of the sport.
Here's some things that surprised me that weren't on there. No Bulls players, and no neither of the Clippers stars, Paul George or Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, Paul George is a guy who's been around, but he's what's this, his 3rd year with the Clippers? So maybe people bought up the shirts. The Clippers have no brand equity. They just don't. I mean, they're
that must be what it comes down to, Sap.
Yeah, UCLA is bigger in LA than the Clippers, and USC is, because they've been a top 10 program this year, right? So, among teams in Southern California, the Clippers are probably 4th. Golden State's probably more popular in Southern California than the Clippers. So they have no brand equity. And look, Kawhi's fantastic, but he's not exactly the most exhilarating personality. So I don't think that you're going to, get a lot of sales from him. And he's been kind of out of the picture the last couple of years too. So yeah, that's interesting. The Bulls have such cool uniforms, the red and the black, and still the connection to Jordan and their stars.
The 3rd biggest media market in the country.
Yeah, and I think maybe you'll see a bump now. Zach LaVine's I'm surprised Zach LaVine's not in there because he's a cool player to watch.
Right, or DeRozan has been so good this year.
Yeah.
Ball is just a cool jersey because it says ball on the back. So
right,
that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And LaVine. Levine's a good looking dude. I think he's dated, well, they all date like hot women, but right. I mean, he's kind of that cool guy, kind of like Devin Booker, Like
Fun
Devin
game too. Really fun game.
Oh yeah,
to
both
watch.
of those guys do. Yeah, I mean Levine's a dunk contest guy. He's also a 3-point shooter. Went to the Olympics. Same thing like Devin Booker, and Booker got to the finals last year, and he's dating whoever, one of the Kardashians. So that's
Right.
always impressive. LeBron being number one isn't a surprise because he changed his number this year, right? So he went from 20
He
to
hasn't
6, and
even
he's
won in the
still
past 20 years. I
yeah,
mean,
he's still the guy. I mean, and then when you go change your number, that also because now all the LeBronistas go, okay, I got 5 other jerseys. Let me get number 6.
it's the most
Literally.
popular player and the most popular team.
Of
As
course,
bankable as it gets. It's
he's
like,
still the most
it's like if The Rock was to be in a Marvel movie, like that
right.
movie's going to make a lot of money. That's it's not,
Of course, yeah, and I mean, he's still the best athlete in the country. I
yeah,
think. I mean,
yeah.
whether you want to, I mean, Brady's wildly popular. Rodgers and Mahomes; those are your 3 most popular guys in football. But again, that sport's going to survive when all those guys are gone. LeBron's still, and he's polarizing, but he still has an incredible fan base that is going to buy his jersey. But I think changing numbers obviously is a big deal because now you've got to get number 6 jersey.
Curry, not surprising at all
No,
at number 2, right? I mean,
no,
he's
they're the 2 most
wildly
popular
popular
players.
too.
Yep, 2 most popular players, and also the girls will buy the Curry jerseys, and they're a big market.
That's true.
So that's a big thing. And I think Jason Tatum was what 6th or 5th.
Jason Tatum is 6th. Yeah.
Okay, and again, good-looking guy playing for I think the girls like Jason Tatum a lot. He's like I said, he's good-looking guy, exciting game. He's got the adorable 4-year-old. The girls love him, so that also factors in.
Huge fan base, classic jersey. That everybody wants to have a Celtics jersey. But I mean, if you look at the top 5, LeBron, Curry, Giannis, Durant, Doncic, and then Tatum is 6th. I would trade him for anybody above him in that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think anybody would, but he's again we always have these discussions. I think he's a top 15 player. I mean, I can't put him in the top 10. I'd say he's a top 15 player, which means he could be 3rd team All NBA. I think he's got to get better as a player, but yeah, he's a star. He's not quite a superstar, but he can sell jerseys. Again, went to Duke, plays for the Celtics, good-looking guy, adorable kid. So yeah, that all kind of factors in.
And Morant as at 7, and you can we've talked about him a lot this year, and you can make sense of his number. His jerseys are going to continue to rise, I would assume. And the guy right after him, Trae Young, who had a spectacular playoffs, and I think we talked about this last year that we could see him as one of the most popular players in the NBA too. Kind of why Steph Curry is popular, similar reason. He doesn't look very imposing. You're like, oh yeah, I see myself in this guy a little bit. So I think the Hawks have struggled this year. And maybe that's why his jersey is not a little bit higher. But Morant and Young, I can definitely see their jerseys going way the hell up after, especially, these guys, LeBron and Curry and Durant have had their jerseys in the top 10 forever. Eventually they're going to leave, and we're going to have guys. Somebody's going to have the top selling jersey. I could totally see it being John Morant.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his game is incredible. Right. And so, every 9-year-old kid that's getting into basketball, he's going to become their favorite player. He's 6'2".
Same with LaMelo Ball, by the way, is 15.
Right. Yeah, LaMelo's on the rise. Again, that's a pretty cool jersey. The Hornets, like the color combination, and he's got a flashy game, more so than his brother.
God, I love watching him play. Celtics played the Hornets the other night, lost by the way. No surprise there, but he is fun to watch. A blast.
He's sensational. Absolutely, does it all. I think he's going to be a guy that at some point averages a triple double. And, could be a 20-10-10 guy. I mean, his defense is atrocious right now, but he can get better at that. But that's a fun team to watch anyway, because they got 4 guys that can kind of go off on any game. You got Rozier, you got Gordon Hayward, you got Miles Bridges. I mean, they got 4 legitimate guys who can get you 20-25 points on a given night. They're pretty good.
And they have a couple of wild cards in the bench. Oubre is a nice player. PJ Washington's a nice player. They're fun. They're building something good there. And he makes players better. Ball.
Yes.
I mean, he improves players' games. So yeah, they're a fun team. And so I totally get it. And I think his jersey will continue to rise too. Just a couple of last interesting notes. Sap Zion Williamson, nowhere to be found, fell off the list. That's not shocking.
You got to kind of be playing. I think if he gets back there and does what I expect him to do, that he'll, start selling jerseys, especially if he ends up on the Knicks. That would be spectacular. But again, when you're not playing, you're not going to sell jerseys, which is unfortunate because I love Zion, but he just can't seem to get healthy.
No Chris Paul on the top 15.
Yeah, he's more of the old guys like him. He's kind of like the young kids aren't going to like. I mean, his game is cerebral, right? I mean, I mean, more than anything. If they won the championship, maybe a bump there. But yeah, if you're the average NBA fan loves Devin Booker, he's kind of cool and all that stuff. Chris Paul's like the cranky old guy out there who's just, obviously one of the all-time great point guards. And look, he's leading his team to the best record in basketball this year.
No members of the Miami Heat and no James Harden, and thank God no Kyrie Irving. Those are the other notable omissions.
Am I surprised? I think the Heat. Let me see. The one guy I think who could jump up a little bit is Tyler Hero.
Yeah, very popular.
If he's playing really well this year. So yeah, young guy who's dynamic.
I just thought their brand would be a little bit bigger, the Heat, but maybe I've miscalculated their brand.
Yeah, and they've got some kind of cool different color schemes too that they use. Look, I like more of the old school uniforms. Like the 76ers old school uniform to me is so cool when they start putting the Liberty Bell on it and all that stuff. I don't, but they have good color scheme. The Celtics and Lakers still have classic uniforms. Like of course. The Celtics green with white. I don't need black on it. I don't need 17 different shades of green. Lakers, the purple and gold stuff is gorgeous. So that always. It's like the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they don't have to change uniforms.
It's printing money. It's easy.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. They can't win any playoff games, but they can certainly sell jerseys.
But yeah, I thought those were notable, omissions too. I'm again, thrilled to see that Kyrie Irving's jersey is not ranked highly. I'm a petty guy that way, Sap.
You sure are. You should like Aaron Rodgers. He's a petty guy.
No, I don't like morons either.
I wouldn't call him a moron. He's a contrarian.
He's well read. I'll give him that.
Oh,
loves Ayn Rand.
Oh, absolutely.
Loves Ayn Rand.
I'm waiting for him on Saturday night to probably bring a book to him on the sideline. When San Francisco has the ball, maybe he'll start reading a little bit.
LeBron does that in the locker room.
Yes.
He reads books in the locker room.
My two guys are very well read.
Yeah, they love reading.
Yes.
All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. As always, we're presented by our friends at Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out their website. Make sure you check out our social medias at JohnSap25 on Twitter, at Jet Stryer. You can find the podcast wherever podcasts are found, or if you'd like the visual version of it, it is on YouTube at youtube.com/Jet Stryer. We'll be back next week with some new pods, and we'll talk to you then, everybody. See ya.